In a monastery nestled high in the Himalayas, where clouds kissed the temple roofs and bells echoed across the valleys, there lived a young monk named Tenzin. He was devoted, intelligent, and disciplined, but restless. While others found serenity in meditation, Tenzin found only noise in his mind. Thoughts raced like wild horses, regrets from the past, desires for the future, and endless questions about the meaning of enlightenment. Every morning before dawn, he would sit cross-legged before the altar, close his eyes, and listen to the sound of his own breathing. But within moments, his mind wandered. "Why can't I find peace?" he whispered to himself. "Why does silence feel so loud?" The head monk, an elderly man named Lama Dorje, observed him quietly. One day after meditation, Lama Dorje approached and said, "Tenzin, peace is not something you chase. It is something that appears when you stop chasing." Tenzin bowed deeply, but the words puzzled him. He wanted to understand, yet the harder he tried, the further peace seemed to drift. That night, as the wind howled outside the monastery walls, Tenzin prayed silently, "Lord of compassion, teach me how to be still." The prayer would soon be answered, but not in the way he expected. The next morning, Lama Dorje called Tenzin to his chamber. "You must go," he said simply. "Leave the monastery, travel into the wilderness. Take nothing but your robe and bowl. You will find your answer in silence itself." Tenzin was stunned. Leave the monastery? Alone? He had never traveled beyond the mountain path. "But, master," he protested, "how will I survive?" "You will eat what the earth provides," said Lama Dorje. "You will drink what the heavens give. Trust silence to be your teacher." And so, with trembling hands, Tenzin packed his few belongings and set out into the unknown. The path was steep and winding. Snowflakes drifted down, melting on his skin. Each step felt heavy with uncertainty. At first, he found beauty in everything. The shimmer of frost, the whisper of wind through pine trees, the rhythm of his own footsteps. But as the days passed, loneliness crept in. Without the chants of his brothers or the comfort of temple bells, the silence grew immense. Every rustle in the forest made his heart race. Every shadow seemed alive. Yet he remembered Lama Dorje's words. Trust silence, he pressed on. Somewhere deep inside, he sensed that beyond fear lay something greater, something waiting to be found. One cold evening, Tenzin found shelter beneath a rocky overhang. The forest stretched endlessly before him, dark and alive with sound. Crickets sang, leaves rustled, and distant wolves howled under the moon. He tried to meditate, but his mind screamed louder than ever. "What if I fail? What if I die out here?" Thoughts swarmed like bees. His breath quickened. He felt trapped inside his own head. Suddenly, he shouted into the darkness, "Why can't I silence my thoughts?" His voice echoed through the trees, and then faded into the still night. And in that fading echo, something stirred within him. He realized that silence was not empty. It was vast, alive, and listening. The next morning, he awoke to the gentle song of a stream nearby. He followed the sound and knelt to drink. As water touched his lips, he felt gratitude for the first time since leaving the monastery. Gratitude not for comfort, but for existence itself. He began to understand silence was not his enemy. It was a mirror reflecting everything he feared. To find peace, he would have to face that reflection without running away. Days turned into weeks. The monk wandered through valleys and mountains, observing the world in silence. He noticed how the trees swayed with the wind but never resisted it. The river flowed around stones without anger. Birds sang only when it was their time, then fell silent again. Everything moved with a quiet wisdom. One afternoon, as he watched snow melt into water, a thought arose. Nature does not seek peace, it is peace. That night, under a sky painted with stars, he sat in meditation once more. The cold bit at his skin, but inside, he felt warmth growing. He listened not to thoughts, but to the heartbeat of the world around him, the soft rustle of leaves, the hum of insects, the breath of wind. For the first time, his mind was still. Not silent, but still. The difference was profound. Silence was no longer something he imposed. It was something he joined. He realized that his life had always been surrounded by this silent harmony. He had simply been too noisy to hear it. One morning, while walking through a misty forest, Tenzin met an old hermit sitting beside a fire. The man's face was wrinkled, his robe worn, but his eyes shone with calmness. The hermit greeted him kindly. "You walk like one searching for something," he said. "I am searching for peace," Tenzin replied. The hermit smiled. "And where have you looked?" In meditation, in prayer, in solitude, said Tenzin, yet my mind never rests. The hermit nodded and stirred the fire. You are like the wind, trying to hold itself still. Peace comes not by control, but by surrender. Tenzin sat with him for days, learning from his silence more than his words. The hermit would sit by the river, watching it flow endlessly. Sometimes he whispered, "Listen long enough, and the river will tell you who you are." When Tenzin finally left, the hermit gave him one piece of advice. The sound of silence is the sound of your soul returning home. Those words lingered in Tenzin's heart as he continued his journey deeper into the mountains. Weeks later, Tenzin reached a vast valley surrounded by towering cliffs. In the center stood a mountain known as the Mountain of Echoes. Locals believed it was sacred, a place where seekers went to confront their own hearts. Tenzin climbed slowly, his breath shallow in the thin air. Each sound he made, every cough, every sigh, bounced back from the cliffs, multiplied and magnified. It was as if the mountain itself spoke to him. He shouted, "Who am I?" The mountain answered, "Who am I?" Tenzin fell to his knees. He realized that the mountain was not mocking him, it was mirroring him. Every echo was his own voice returning. Every cry was an invitation to listen, not to the world, but to himself. He sat there for hours, letting the echoes fade until only silence remained. In that silence, something inside him broke open, not in pain, but in release. For the first time, he wasn't trying to understand. He was simply being. The wind whispered through the rocks, and Tenzin smiled. The silence no longer felt empty, it felt whole. But the path to peace is never straight. One night, as a storm raged over the valley, Tenzin's fear returned. Lightning flashed, thunder roared, rain poured down in torrents. He ran for shelter but found none. Soaked and trembling, he cried out, "Why must silence be so cruel?" In that moment, a voice rose, not from the sky but from within him. "You mistake silence for comfort. It is not here to soothe you. It is here to reveal you." The words pierced his heart. He understood then that silence was not an escape from suffering. It was the doorway through it. He stopped running. He stood beneath the storm, rain streaming down his face, and let it all come: fear, grief, loneliness, surrender. When the storm passed, the air was pure, the sky clear, and Tenzin felt lighter, as if something old had been washed away. He realized that peace is not the absence of storms, but the stillness found within them. Days later, while resting beside a meadow, Tenzin noticed a single white flower growing through the cracks of a stone. It swayed gently in the wind, fragile yet unbroken. He sat beside it, mesmerized. How can something so delicate survive here? He wondered. Then it came to him. Because it doesn't resist. The flower did not fight the wind or the rain. It simply existed. Its peace came from acceptance. For hours, Tenzin watched the flower, and as he did, his breathing slowed. His thoughts softened. Time disappeared. He whispered, "Peace is not found in silence alone. It is found in harmony with all that is." He closed his eyes, and in that stillness, he felt the same life that moved through the flower moving through him. He was no longer a monk seeking peace. He was peace. The world had not changed, only his way of seeing it had. Months later, Tenzin returned to the monastery. His brothers were surprised. He seemed transformed. His movements were slower, his eyes softer, his presence radiant. Lama Dorje greeted him with a smile. "You have found what you were seeking." Tenzin bowed. "Yes, master, but I found nothing." The old monk laughed gently. "Then you have found everything." Tenzin resumed his duties, sweeping floors, tending the garden, meditating at dawn. Yet each act was now filled with awareness. He no longer sought peace outside himself. He carried it wherever he went. When young novices asked how to silence their minds, he would say, "Do not fight the noise. Listen to it until it becomes music. In the heart of that music, silence will find you." And so, the restless monk became a teacher of calm, not through words, but through presence. Years passed. The monastery thrived. Visitors came from distant lands to learn from Tenzin, the monk who had found peace in silence. One day, a student asked him, "Master, what did silence teach you?" Tenzin smiled and pointed to the mountains beyond. "When the wind blows, do you hear it?" "Yes." "And when it stops, what remains?" The student thought for a moment. "Silence." Tenzin nodded. "That is where peace lives, not in the wind, not in the stillness, but in the awareness of both." As the sun set, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Tenzin sat quietly beneath a tree. The bells began to ring for evening prayer. He closed his eyes and listened, not to escape the world, but to merge with it. And in that eternal silence, he smiled, for he had finally heard the sound of peace.